It's Friday, Chof Elul, Tovshin Ayam Vover and Basi Legani, Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud Gimel, and Teres Menachem Sefer HaMarim Tovshin Yud Gimel, and we are at the bottom of page Pei Beis, on the top of page Pei Gimel, in middle of Ois Hey, or in the first section of Ois Hey, chapter 5. Good morning. And we are discussing over here the Sheiresh HaNeshama. Where does this all come from? The point that Rebbe is trying to drive at is why it is indeed the nature of every single Jew that he does not want and is not able to be separated from Getlichkeit. So he began to explain that he quoted the Eitz Chaim that says that there's a small spark, there's one small spark of the Creator which clothes itself in the one spark of the created, which is called Yechida. And they fuse as one. And this is present in each and every Jew, irrespective of difference of level and commitment. That spark always remains intact. On all the other levels, there could be a le'umazeh, there could be opposition. On that aspect of the soul, on the Yechida Shebenefesh, on the Pinta Yid, there is no opposition. That's why it says in Chassidus that when it comes, as the Rebbe explains over here, that when it comes to Mesiras Nefesh, the point that the Rebbe makes here, when it comes to self-sacrifice, every Yid will give away his life when he's faced with the stark reality of being separated, God forbid, with the Eibishter. So now the Rebbe goes into dissecting this. Where does the soul actually come from? So he asked, we'll start from 3 lines from the bottom again, from on Ois Hey, on page Pei Beis. Although the spark of the created is rooted from where? From the kelim, from the vessels. What does that mean? As the Tzemach Tzedek elaborates at length. So what's the problem? And the idea of vessels is, what's the whole concept of vessels? They are limitation and separation. That's what they are. So why do you say to me that this is present in each and every Jew equally, irrespective of level? If the nitzutz nivra, if the spark of the nivra, which is the spark of the created, which is the Yechida, the Pintele, right, in which the nitzutz beri is inserted, the spark of the Creator is clothed, is from where? The nitzutz nivra stems from where? From the kelim, from the vessels. That's fragmentation. That's separation. So there should be differences. He says, Mikol Mokem, nevertheless, it is known, yes, it's rooted in kelim, but it's rooted in the inner dimension of the keli. And as explained before, that, and as the Rebbe will elaborate later on, that the inner dimension, the inner keli, the inner part of a vessel, a physical receptacle, is the part that comes in contact with the contents that's inside, as opposed to the outside. So which means to say, in the spiritual sense, that the inner dimension of the keli is connected to an inner dimension of the oir. Obefrat, the Rebbe goes on, Bechinas Yechida, the aspect of the Yechida, that's for all parts of the Neshama. As we know, the Neshama has Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida, the 5 parts, right? The 5 levels. So all of them are rooted and stem from the Pnimius HaKelim, the inner dimension of the Kelim. The Rebbe is going to elaborate in a moment. Particularly Yechida, which is the part of the Neshama in which the Nitzutz Beiri, the spark of the Creator, is clothed and fused as one, who may oir machtzev haneshamis, that stems, its root stems from the light of the quarry of souls, shehu levush lemachtzev asfiris, which is a garment for the quarry of the divine attributes. Shem chitzenius ak upnimius ak, which are respectively the external dimension of ak of Adam Kadmon, primordial man, upnimius ak, and the internal dimension of primordial man. Go through the words and then we'll go back and explain this for a moment. The machtzev haneshama is the quarry of souls, hu chitzenius ak. is the external dimension of Adam Kadmon of Ak. Umachzev HaSfiros, and the quarry of the Sfiros, Upnimius Ak, is the inner dimension of Ak. Right? What does that mean? He's saying two things over here. In answer to the question that if we say that the root of souls is from Kalim, that denotes separation, he says two things. First of all, it's not just from any aspect of Kalim. It's from the inner dimension of the Kalim. Right? And he's going to explain the significance of that in a moment. Second of all, he says, particularly Yechida, not only is it from the inner dimension of the Keli, but there's a higher aspect in it as well. In that, it is rooted in the light of the quarry of souls, which is a garment for the quarry of Sfiris. Which is, Chitzonius Ak would be the quarry of souls, Pnimius Ak would be the quarry of Sfiris. Right? What's the significance of that? So the Rebbe goes on and says, Ve'ein ze beis dvarim mivdolim, we'll go back, we'll elaborate in a moment. Ve'ein ze beis dvarim mivdolim zemiza, these are not two separate things, one from another. Eladan Hasham is sheshoshim mipnimis hakelim, but rather the souls that are rooted in the inner aspect of the kelim, of the inner dimension of the vessels. Harei pnimius hakelim imichedes imaeram islabish b'seicham. The inner dimension of the keli is fused with the light that clothes itself in these kelim. So he says like this. Number one, neshamas are rooted in the inner dimension of kelim. And by the way, kelim, of course, are animated by the Ur, but kelim is a lakus. And as it says in the beginning of Siman Chof in the Geras HaKedesh, Iyu v'chayoy yichad, Iyu v'garmoy yichad. He and his vivifications are one. He and his causations are one. Or he and the Uris are one, and he and the kelim are one. And as the Alter Rebbe explains over there, what does it mean? That the kelim are elakus. Kelim are godliness. Right? So neshamas are rooted in pnimius hakelim, in the inner dimension of kelim. On top of that, when you say, there's another expression that the neshama, or the ur machzev neshama, is the light of the quarry of souls, is a levush, is a garment for what? For the light of the quarry of Sfiris. That's an expression from the Eitz Chaim, right? But in other words, there is a connection between the source of the soul with the ur of Adam Kadmon. Right? So that's what he's saying. Number one, neshamas comes from the pnimius hakelim, not just any aspect of the kelim, but from the inner dimension of the kelim, which is fused with the inner dimension of the Ur. Number two, there is this idea of the soul, the light of the quarry of the souls, being a garment for the light of the quarry of the spheres, for the Ur. Just as an aside, Harris, this might be, I'm not sure about it, I have to look into it more carefully. When we talk about that in other places in Chassidus, it says that the source of neshamas is from Ur, as opposed to Malachim, that the source is from Kelim. This might be these two strands, because he seems to be saying two things. There's an aspect of the neshama that's rooted in the Pnimius HaKeli, and there's an aspect of the neshama that's rooted in the Ur. But he goes on to explain really that it's really one and the same. You can't separate the two, because the Pnimius HaKeli is fused with the Pnimius Ur. Okay, this is the Kabbalistic aspect of it. Let's jump to the end for a second, and then it'll be easier to get.
The same thing.
It's not exactly, but let's.
The problem is that we built up a different picture, and our picture is wrong. That's the problem. You have to redefine the picture.
Yeah, but
Let's get to the picture in a second. Let's first see what the Rebbe says over here. What the Rebbe is saying over here is like this. What's the Rebbe driving at? He's answering the question: why is it that it's the nature of every single Jew that he cannot be separated from godliness? Why is that?
Never problem with that until now.
Well, the reality is that there's the Ruach Shtus, but at the core of it, a Yid can't be separated from godliness. Why? And he says every single Yid, and no Yid, and this is a characteristic that's present in every single Yid, equally, whether it's a Moshe Rabbeinu or somebody of a very low level, right? So he's trying to explain that there is an aspect in the neshama, in the soul, that is the same by every yid. What is it? The nitzutz boirei, the spark of the creator that's inserted in the nitzutz nivra. In order to get there, he goes through the steps. Let's see where the neshama comes from. So he says in one place it says that the source of the neshama is from Kalim, right? And Kalim is fragmentation, separation, difference. So there are differences. So he explains, no, it's not just any Keli, it's Pnimius HaKeli. What's the significance of Pnimius HaKeli? The internal dimension of the Keli. The internal dimension of the Keli is fused with the Ur. Then it's not just with any Ur, because the Ur HaNeshama, the way it is rooted in Ak, is fused with the Ur of the Spheres. Right? And what aspect of the Ur? In Ur you have the Pnimis and the Chitzonius. So if you say that the soul is from the Pnimis HaKeli, right? The inner dimension of the Keli, that is fused with the inner dimension of the Ur. And not only with the inner dimension, and what's inserted in the inner dimension of the Ur? The inner dimension of where the Ur comes from, which means the essence of the Ur. And the essence of the Ur is connected to the very essence of Hashem. So through that process, the bottom line is that the spark of the creator is inserted in the spark of the created. It fuses as one to make this entity known as Yechida, the essence of the soul, which has in it basically part of the creator, and therefore it can't be separated from godliness, and it's equal in every single yid. What's the significance of Pnimius HaKeli, which is fused with Pnimius HaEr? So for that he brings the metaphor of the difference between two types of hashpah, two types of flow and communication, as it were, from one level to another. There is the hashpah, the relationship between a Rav and a Talmud, a teacher and a student. He's sharing something from his mind, from his brain. Then there is the hashpah, satipa, the seminal point that the father transmits in order for the child to be born. What's the difference? They both come mimayach ha'av, from the father's brain, right? Or from the teacher here, the father, right? But the hashpah from a Rav to a Talmud, when you communicate an intellectual thought, that's hashpah chitzonius. Even though it's more esoteric, it's more spiritual, but it doesn't contain the essence. That's why you find that the Talmud, as great and as bright as he might be, it might take him a long time, if it's a proper Rav, to get to the bottom of what the Rav has to say. Whereas a son, a child, is like in the likeness of the father, and not only that, can draw on these sources of the energies of the father, that he could, in a revealed way, be even greater than the father. As the famous Maimon Chazal, that the power of the son could be greater or is greater than the power of the father. It's a Gemara in Shavuos, where it talks about oaths, about extracting things from people that owe you things. So the father, in certain instances, has to swear in order to take an oath. The son doesn't. So the Gemara says that the power of the son is greater than the power of the father. But Chassidus explains it even deeper, that it's Yafa Kecha Ben Mika Yechav. Where does the son get this ability to be even greater and better, more talented, as it were? Mika Yechav, from the strength of the father, from the father himself. Why? Because the father transmits his etzem to the son, and in the essence, everything is present. But the point that Rebbe again makes is that when we talk about neshamas being rooted in Pnimius HaKeli, the inner dimension of the Keli, in other words, that means that the inner dimension of the Keli fuses with the inner dimension of the Ur, which fuses with the Etzem Ur, which is rooted in the very essence of Hashem. And the transmission is a hashpah atzmis. That's the point. It's an essential flow. It's an essential transmission, and that is why it's in the image of Hashem Himself, the neshama, and that is why the soul can't be separated from the Eibishter. Of course, we're talking about what Yechida Shebenefesh. Let's try to get through it, as best as we can, at least for now. Obviously, I mean, I have to say probably there's going to be now a break for till after Rosh Hashanah at least.
We'll be able to work on it.
So at least let's get through to this point that we can. So again, although neshamas are from Kelim, yet they're from Pnimius HaKelim. And not only are they from Pnimius HaKelim, when you talk about Yechida, Yechida is In Yechida is clothed the oir of the spheres, right? Oir machzev neshamas is levush lemachzev spheres, which is chitzoni sak and pnimi sak respectively. That the neshamas is the external dimension, in which is clothed the internal dimension of ak. And they're not two separate things. Eladan neshamas, 3 lines from the top. Eladan neshamas, hashoshim pnimi sakelim. But rather, when we talk about the souls that are rooted in the inner dimension of the kelim of the vessels, what does it mean that it's from the internal dimension of the vessel? It means the internal dimension of the vessel, in other words, means it is united, it is fused, it's one with the divine light that clothes itself in it. Just like in the physical sense, the inner part of the vessel of a receptacle is close to that which clothes itself in it, to the contents of it. So too it's in the spiritual sense that the inner dimension of the keli, of the vessel, is united, is fused with, is one with the light that clothes itself in it. The Oid not only is it in close proximity and united with that which is clothed in it, but even more so, she, the vessel, is united also with the very essence of the light, of the energy. The external aspect of the kli, of the vessel. What is that? What is the function of the external dimension of the kli? That its function is to bestow outside of it, to transmit onwards. So that part of the keli, first of all, it is not united with the light, which clothes itself in it. Why? Because the outside, just like physically, you look at the cup, the contents of the cup touches the inside, but not the outside. So not only that, even more so, which part of the light is transmitted through the external dimension of the keli, and is drawn down to the outside. It's only that part of the light which is bestowed onto the other. In other words, we're talking about an aspect of the Eir in which it is possible that there should be transmission outwards, revelation outwards. This is not the case when we talk about the inner dimension of the vessel. Besides the fact, in addition to the fact that it is united and fused with the light that's in it, but even more so with which dimension of the Eir? She is united and as one with the very essence of the Eir. That's the point. The inner dimension of the Eir, the essence of the Eir, of the energy, cannot come in a manner of ishtalshalos, in an orderly manner to that which is outside of it. It is similar to the difference between the transmission of intellect and the transmission of the seminal point. The hashpos haseichel masha harav mashpil talmidei, the transmission of an intellectual idea, that which the Rav it transmits onto his students. He hashpach etzenis b'lvad. That's only an external transmission. That's why it could be that for some time this student will not get to the bottom of what his Rebbe has to say to him. Although he understands everything that his Rav, his teacher, is teaching him, nevertheless he won't get to the bottom of it. Why? Because it's only an external transmission. Therefore, if it's an external transmission, he may not get to the bottom of it. He may not get to the inner aspect of it, of that idea, the intellectual idea. This is not the case when we talk about the transmission of the seminal point. This is an internal transmission to give birth to a child that is in the likeness of the father. So this is the idea. The fact that he gives birth, that what is born is a child that is similar to the father, in the image of the father. It's not just that the child, in the revealed aspects of the child, he is in the likeness of the father, that he looks like the father, etc. Or he behaves like the father. It means that the essence of the child is in the likeness of the essence of the father. Therefore, it is possible that the power of the son should be greater than the power of the father. But this also stems from the father. Because when one gives birth, he gives birth to in the likeness of one's essence. Therefore, even though the Father's revealed faculties may be of a lesser degree, nevertheless, in his essence, he possesses the totality of the potential, and in the child, that potential might come out in a stronger way than in the Father. Why? Because what was transmitted from the Father to the child? His essence. Why indeed is the child born in the likeness of the Father? Because what was transmitted from the Father? An essential transmission. What is he transmitting to him? His essence. And where does this essence come? This essence comes down into the essence of the Oir, because Oir is the idea of transmission, but it's in the essence of the Oir, which is fused as one with the inner aspect of the Keli, which is basically going back to the Neshamas. When we talk about the souls being rooted in the Pnimius HaKelim, it means it is fused as one with what? With the inner dimension of the Oir, with the essence of the Oir, of the energy, of the divine energy, in which is inserted what? Which is a transmission of the Atzmis, an essential transmission. And although the transmission of the essence of the Oir onwards also goes via what? The exterior aspect of the Keli. And that transmission is outside of him, just like in a father and a son. The seminal drop is transmitted outside. Right? And we just said a moment ago, says the Rebbe, that when we talk about the Chetzenis HaKli, the external dimension of the Keli, that denotes that the Etzem HaEr, the inner dimension of the Eir, is not transmitted on. In this case, yes, it goes via the outside of the Keli, but it's not in the manner that it goes from stage to stage to stage, Kimal de Hefsik, but rather it goes through a jump, through a gap, durch a sprung, through a jump. Because if it would be in an orderly manner, without a jump, without a gap, it would be impossible for the Etzem HaEir, which contains the Hashpah Atzmis, to be able to come down to something outside of it. Why? Because it's an essential Hashpah. So the bottom line is that in this sense, when we talk about Neshamis, it's Pnimius HaKeli, which is fused with the Etzem HaEir, in which is contained what? The very essence of where the air comes from. And therefore, that's inserted, that's the Nitzutz B'rei, the spark of the Creator, which clothes itself in the spark of the created, and therefore, that's the Pinta Liyid, and it's in the likeness of Hashem, and therefore, it can't be separated from the Eibishter. And this is equal in every Jew. Continue in Mitzvah Hashem, hopefully, after Rosh Hashanah. A good to get bench to you.